On a seemingly ordinary evening in 2011, alarm bells rang at a 7-Eleven convenience store in Georgia. Reports of an armed robbery poured into the local police department, and within minutes officers arrived at the scene. But the suspect had already vanished. Expanding their search, police heard a disturbance inside a nearby house. They stormed in and discovered a known heroin addict sitting inside with a gun. With no other leads, they arrested him on the spot. That man was Jeff Pearson. Police were confident they had caught their culprit. What followed, however, would go down in history as one of the rare times a suspect completely outmaneuvered investigators during an interrogation. Despite experiencing agonizing heroin withdrawal, Jeff managed to outthink seasoned detectives, walk away free, and become a legend within interrogation circles. This is the story of how Jeff Pearson beat the cops at their own game. Arrest and processing Jeff was taken into custody and processed in the usual way, handcuffed, placed in holding, and then moved to an interrogation room. Dressed in prison scrubs, he looked tired, but not broken. By law, before questioning began, detectives were required to read him his Miranda rights, the right to remain silent. Anything said can and will be used against him. The right to consult a lawyer, the right to stop questioning at any time. Most suspects glaze over these warnings, either from fear or from overfamiliarity, thanks to TV crime shows. Jeff, however, listened carefully. From the very beginning, he understood these rights weren't just words, they were his shield. When asked if he understood his rights, Jeff refused to play along. He stayed silent. His first instinct was the right one: say nothing without a lawyer. First round, silence as a weapon. In the first interrogation session, detectives tried the usual warm-up approach. They asked casual questions, hoping Jeff would relax and start talking. But Jeff had been through the system before. He knew the police's job wasn't to be his friend, it was to secure a confession. When pressed, Jeff responded bluntly, "Get me back to the cell. I don't talk to you." That single line set the tone. Detectives leaned back, feigning patience, trying to signal that they had all the time in the world. In reality, their frustration was already showing. They had no real evidence tying Jeff to the robbery beyond proximity. Without his words, they had nothing. Jeff's silence wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. Second round, the withdrawals begin 2 hours later. Detectives brought him back. This time, they tried a different tactic, offering comfort. "Do you want a Coke?" one officer asked. Jeff agreed, but immediately mentioned something else: methadone. As a long-time heroin user, he was beginning to feel the brutal onset of withdrawal. Methadone could have eased it. Instead, police ignored his request. Despite his deteriorating state, Jeff stayed sharp. Detectives pressed him about his history, about heroin, about his friends. Jeff casually admitted being an addict, but firmly denied the robbery. "I didn't commit no armed robbery. Wrong place, wrong time." When they tried to befriend him, he cut them off. "You're not my friend. All you're trying to get is a stupid confession, and you're not going to get one." Even in withdrawal, Jeff recognized manipulation. He reminded them repeatedly he wanted a lawyer. Every time the conversation circled back, he refused to budge. The ride technique and why it failed. At this point, detectives shifted toward the raid technique, a widely used interrogation method developed in the 1960s. It relies on 9 psychological steps, beginning with confrontation, moving through empathy and minimization, and ending with offering the suspect 2 versions of events, both of which imply guilt. The idea is to corner suspects into choosing to confess. But Jeff saw through it. When detectives suggested he might have just been unlucky, in the wrong place at the wrong time, Jeff agreed but held his ground. "I didn't do it. You've got no evidence." When they claimed to have physical evidence, he laughed it off. "Like what? Name it." The officers couldn't. By refusing to engage, Jeff dismantled the entire raid process. Detectives could not create rapport, could not trick him into minimizing, and could not present false evidence without him calling their bluff. Bargains and bribes. Desperate, detectives tried bargaining. They hinted they could put in a good word with his parole officer if he helped them. Jeff instantly recognized the trap. What good is a gold star if you're sentenced to 20 years? He mocked their attempt. The only reason I came up here is to get a Coke. Now I want a Butterfinger." The request sounded ridiculous, but it revealed something important. Jeff was relaxed. Instead of panicking under pressure, he treated the interrogation like a game he was winning, and in many ways, he was. Playing the clock. Every interrogation has a clock. Legally, police cannot hold suspects indefinitely without evidence. Jeff knew it. As hours ticked by, he reminded them, "You've got nothing. All you did was find me in a house." He pointed out that being near the crime scene was not the same as committing the crime. He even noted how everything said in the room would appear in the discovery process during trial. Evidence he could later use against them if they twisted his words. For detectives, this was a nightmare. They had a suspect who refused to talk, refused to break, and understood the system well enough to exploit its limits. The breaking point. By the final hours, Jeff was pale, sweating, and coughing up blood from withdrawal. Yet even in pain, he didn't give in. When pressed again, he simply said, "I need a lawyer. I didn't do anything." 12 hours after his arrest, with no confession, no evidence, and no legal grounds to hold him, Jeff Pearson was released. Why Jeff won? Jeff's case is extraordinary because he wasn't a lawyer, wasn't wealthy, and wasn't sober. He was a heroin addict in withdrawal. Yet he still managed to outwit experienced detectives. He did it by sticking to 3 simple principles. Silence is power. He refused to talk without a lawyer, even when tempted. Never believed the bluff. He challenged claims of evidence, exposing them as empty threats. Time is leverage. He knew police had a limited window, and he waited them out. In doing so, he turned the interrogation from a trap into a stalemate, one that only he could win. Aftermath. Jeff's release shocked many in the interrogation community. His footage, later uploaded to his own YouTube channel on September 25, 2011, became a cult classic. Viewers saw not just defiance, but a real-time demonstration of how an average person could protect themselves in custody. Instead of serving a decade behind bars, Jeff walked free after a single day. For police, it was a humiliating failure. For Jeff, it was a turning point. Reports suggest that after this ordeal, Jeff began to rebuild his life. He eventually kicked heroin, focused on music, and continued uploading content, including tips on how to handle police questioning. To many, he became both a cautionary tale and an underground folk hero. Lessons from the Jeff Pearson case. Jeff's story highlights important truths about the justice system. Police are not neutral. Their goal is to secure a confession, not necessarily the truth. Silence cannot be used against you. Talking without a lawyer almost always creates risk. False confessions happen. The raid technique has a history of producing them, especially under stress. Jeff avoided this trap by saying as little as possible. Knowledge is defense. Understanding your rights is the strongest weapon you can carry into an interrogation. For ordinary citizens, Jeff's case is a reminder that exercising your rights is not about looking guilty. It's about protecting yourself when the system is stacked against you. The legend of Jeff Pearson. In the years since, Jeff has become a kind of urban legend. His interrogation footage circulates online, dissected by legal experts, YouTubers, and armchair detectives. Some admire his composure. Others see him as reckless but lucky. But there's no denying the impact. He turned what could have been a life sentence into a day of candy bars, sodas, and silence. For Jeff Pearson, the interrogation room became a battlefield, and against all odds, he walked out the winner. The ethical debate. Jeff Pearson's case also sparked an ethical debate within both law enforcement and the public. On one hand, critics argued that Jeff was a career criminal who happened to outlast the detectives because of a technicality, not innocence. On the other hand, many legal experts praised the outcome as a necessary reminder that constitutional rights exist for everyone, guilty or not. The case forced uncomfortable questions. If police had no evidence beyond suspicion, should Jeff have ever been held that long? Were detectives trying to bend the rules by ignoring his repeated requests for a lawyer? For many observers, Jeff's success wasn't just about clever resistance. It exposed how easily suspects can be pressured into false confessions when they don't know their rights. By holding the line, Jeff unintentionally highlighted a flaw in the system. His story became more than just a tale of defiance. It became a real, world demonstration of why Miranda rights matter, and why silence in an interrogation room is often the smartest move a suspect can make. The fact that Jeff pulled this off while suffering heroin withdrawal makes his story even more remarkable. It wasn't charm or manipulation that saved him. It was discipline, silence, and a refusal to play by the detective's script. The case of Jeff Pearson will always be remembered, not just as the story of a robbery suspect, but as a rare and fascinating example of what happens when the suspect, armed only with knowledge of his rights, outsmarts the police.